Hello everybody and welcome to Tuesday's edition of the Chris Pritchard Cycling News Show. I don't even know where to start with this weekend of racing, but there's so much to talk about, both good things and, thankfully, things that could have been a hell of a lot worse than they actually were. But before we get into the news, don't forget there's less than 10 days now to get your tickets at Win Your Dream Bike. Make sure you're over 18, make sure you live in the UK for now. Head over to winyourdreambike.co.uk, buy your tickets so you can be in the draw for your chance to win a brand new Trek Madone. Who don't want one of them? We're also giving away a Ribble bike this week as part of Cameron Jeffers' bundle. So all Cameron's sponsors, we're essentially giving them away as a prize, amongst other things as well: Katusha, clothing, Strong Supplies, nutrition, and Grand Tour coffee subscriptions. So make sure you go head over there now, buy your tickets, and then wait for the draw at the end of the month. Right, let's try and dissect this whole weekend of racing. Boosh. All right, and let's start with the biggest race over the weekend, by far one of the best races I've seen in a long time, the Criterium de Dauphine. And during the middle of stage 4, the race organiser had actually started engraving Primož Roglic's name onto the trophy. Such was his dominance, such was the dominance of Jumbo-Visma. It was his to lose, which essentially it did, because he came down in a crash on stage 4 and ultimately couldn't take to the start line on stage 5, which essentially just blew the doors wide open for anybody to take victory at the Criterium de Dauphine. If you look at the top 10 prior to stage 5 starting, it could have been any one of these who was going to take the victory. Thibaut Pinot was obviously leading after Primož Roglic's departure, but Guillaume Martin could have taken the victory. Mikel Landa promoted into 3rd place, although I just didn't have much hope on him. Danny Martinez, Miguel Angel Lopez, Nairo Quintana, same again. He's there or thereabouts, but he just seems to be missing that little bit extra. Same with Richie Porte. And you could go all the way down to Tadej Pogačar, who had promoted himself up into 8th place. Still a minute and 17 behind, but on a good day, if he's feeling strong, he could have taken the victory. So essentially, stage 5 became a one-day race where the boys went at it. It was just a smash fest from the start. The stage eventually going to Sepp Kuss. Obviously he had free rein now. Primož Roglic wasn't in the race and he took that to his full advantage, taking the stage victory. Danny Martinez came over in 2nd place. He was 12 seconds behind the leader at the start of the day, which was Thibaut Pinot. So taking his 6-second time bonus, he just needed to put 6 seconds into him to make sure he secured victory. Tadej Pogačar came over the line in 3rd and Pavel Sivakov in 4th place. That had to be the ride of the day. The guy was battered and bruised after a big crash. He'd put in some massive efforts to try and stay away, ultimately coming 45 seconds behind Sepp Kuss, but in doing so, putting his hat into the ring to become Team Ineos' #1 rider at the Tour de France. We'll get into that shortly. Great result for Danny Martinez, taking the overall victory, but I've got to say, rider of the week at the Dauphiné has to be Wout van Aert. The guy's coming off 2 big victories from Milan-San Remo and Strade Bianche, and there's nothing that this man can't do. Worked tirelessly on the front for not only Primož Roglic but also his team, and he ended up securing that green jersey as well. It was an epic performance from Wout van Aert, so rider of the week has to be him. But there's so much else to talk about during the Criterium de Dauphine. The amount of riders that crashed, the amount of riders that abandoned, the amount of riders who just aren't quite looking as good as we thought they might be. So first up, let's talk about Jumbo-Visma looking in superior form over everybody else, doing to Team Ineos what normally Team Ineos do to other teams. They looked coherent, they looked like a team, they were working hard, and everybody looked really, really strong on the bikes, especially Sepp Kuss. He looks dominant. And don't forget, this team lost Primož Roglic, it lost Steven Kruijswijk, and it still ended up winning the overall team prize at the Criterium de Dauphine. Such was the depth of their team. Then we look at Team Ineos. We had their leader, Egan Bernal, pull out of the race due to a back injury. And the other 2 riders who we are assuming could be taking that main role at the Tour de France, Geraint Thomas and Chris Froome, they were nowhere. The only real saving grace from Team Ineos was Pavel Sivakov towards the end of the race. He just seemed to get better and better. Obviously, he had that crash on stage 5. It was a bit of a nasty one. That could have easily been a collarbone or a breakage, but thankfully he managed to get back on his bike. Finished in the top 5 of that final stage. And again, yeah, essentially saying to Team Ineos, I'm here, pick me. And you've got to say, looking at how the rest of the team performed, and obviously Egan Bernal pulling out with a back injury, who else is going to take the reins to take this team to victory at the Tour de France? Or is this just another Team Ineos ploy from Dave Brailsford and Tim Kerrison, knowing that in about 10 days' time these boys... In fact, you don't even need to peak at the start of the Tour de France, do you? The Tour de France can't, or is very rarely won in the first week. It's always down to that last week and a half towards the end, where the big mountains come, everyone starts to get tired, everyone starts to get fatigued, and that's when the real cream of the crop rises to the top, and you see who is the real deal. And maybe Team Ineos know that there's no need to be peaking now. They know that it's fine. We've had this strange period preparing for this Tour de France. We know where our numbers are at. We know where we need to be right now, and where we're at is absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. Come the third week of the Tour de France, when this lot, Jumbo Visma and the other ones that are peaking now, they're going out the back. Our boys are only getting stronger and stronger. Maybe that's the secret. Maybe that's the key. Or maybe they pulled Egan Bernal out to fill him full of drugs. Egan, get in the back of the camper. Got something special for you. For legal reasons, I don't think that's the case. So yeah, what was your highlight of the Criterium de Dauphine? Plenty to go at, lots of action to talk about. Leave your comments down below on anything. Oh, Leonard Kemner, what a cracking performance, before anybody comments on that. Great victory on stage 4, and looking like a real solid rider come the Tour de France if Bora Hansgrohe take him, which they should. Next up, and obviously over the weekend, we saw Il Lombardia, which is a race normally saved for the end of the season. It's normally the last classic of the year. It had been moved to midsummer. Very hot, very arduous course, probably one of the hardest classics known to man. Before we get into the main story of what happened there, let's talk about the race itself. And it was won by Jakob Fuglsang. This was a pure race of attrition. If you look at the top 10, the riders were just littered all over the road. Fuglsang taking overall victory from George Bennett, who was 31 seconds down. Alexander Vlasov was a further 20 seconds down, then Bauke Mollema, 1 minute and 19 down, and it just keeps going. Giulio Ciccone, 1 minute 40. Vincenzo Nibali, 3 minutes 31. Mike Schachmann was in 7th. We'll talk about him shortly. He was 4 minutes and 31 down, and there were just riders coming in all over the place. But anybody who was watching that race will not necessarily care about the result, but the result was the last thing on their mind after what we saw on the telly. So the TV coverage came back from an advert, and we'd heard that Remco Evenepoel had a bit of a crash and his bike was at the side of the road, but no one really knew where he was. And then the first pictures came through of his accident, and oh my, it made me sick. And I'm sure anybody who watched it felt exactly the same. Like, there's no way he's surviving that. As morbid and horrible as it is, you didn't expect anything other than the news that, well, thankfully we didn't. But if you see it from this fan's point of view, just watch it, and hey, viewer discretion and all that jazz. If it's, I wouldn't show it if there were serious injuries, if anything major had happened. However, we know that Remco's all right now, so. But just watch this. Now, obviously, that's the commissaire's car, and he's the first person on the scene now. You'd think that car would pull over. They've just witnessed, they saw it happen. They've just witnessed one of the riders in their event literally throw themselves off a bridge head first, right? All right, yeah, fair enough. Move the bike out of the way. But then to get back in the car and drive off. Now, I know there's a race going on, but come on. Why is that guy not running down? And I'm sure he got on the radio straight away and he was like, this has happened, come on, we need to get someone there. But still, that's a person's life at stake. And his lack of action, he could have got down there and potentially saved somebody's life if it had come to that. But the fact that he gets back in the car goes, and then everybody just goes, and then these TV cameras come around like, why is there a bike there? Where's the rider? What's happening? The poor lad is laid down at the bottom of that ravine or whatever it was, potentially dead. Maybe that's what he thought. Maybe he was like, well, he's a goner. Don't worry about that. Someone will scrape him up. I don't know. But I like to think if that was me, I would have made my way down there as safely and quickly as I could have to make sure whoever was down there was safe and not on their own. I mean, hey, listen, the latest update is he suffered a contusion to his lung and he fractured his hip. It could have been so much worse. So much worse. And then the latest update from Deceuninck Quickstep is that he's been transferred back over to Belgium, where obviously he's going to get the best treatment. Hopefully he's going to be back on his bike within a couple of months. We could be talking about something totally different today, but thankfully, we're not. And that wasn't the only moment we held our breath during Lombardia, because Max Schachmann, who finished 7th in the race, was hit after a car driven by the general public got onto the course and for some bizarre reason did this.
Why would you? Well, there's a way of driving in a bike race, but that's not it.
I think.
Now I'm going to try and refrain from judging this person because you don't know what was happening. She could have been absolutely bricking herself and panicking that she'd just realised what she'd done and she was like, I need to get off of the road. Or alternatively, she could have just been pulling up to Aldi and not had a care in the world. I don't know. But either way, she ended up pulling right in front of Max Schachmann, essentially giving him nowhere to go apart from hitting the back end of her car. And again, like seriously, we could be talking about 2 fatalities at the same race. It's so fortunate that both of those riders managed to get away with it, and safety seems to be the talking point this weekend, because not only do we have these 2 incidents that clearly could have been avoided, but then we go back to the Criterium de Dauphine and stage 5, the riders put in a bit of a protest at the start. We never saw this on TV, but they put in a bit of a protest because of the conditions that they were expected to race in on one of the descents. It just wasn't worthy of racing on, so they had a 10-kilometre neutralised part of the race to make sure that all the riders got through it safely. And then we move on to the Tour of Wallonie. Again, riders left, right and centre taking to Twitter to complain to the UCI and the race organisers that the conditions that they're racing under just aren't good enough. Ilio Kaiser tweeted this out, and obviously that's a generic picture of a road in Sheffield clearly, but in his tweet he's saying trying to avoid potholes in the road during today's stage equals mission impossible. And then Florian, forgive me Florian, Senechel tweeted this out after the race. Red card today for the organisation of the Tour de Wallonie. Circuit much too dangerous for a sprint finish. Road in bad condition. Too many traps on the side of the road. Always reacted when there is a death or serious injury. Making it safer for runners is not a priority. Well, I presume it means cyclists there, but you understand the sentiment behind it. Luke Rowe retweeted that saying, amen to that, what a shit course today. Michael Morkov also retweeted Ilio Kaiser's tweet, and for sure UCI Cycling have no responsibility to this, like with other safety issues and crashes. So at the time of recording this, just let me fill you in with the results from the Tour de Wallonie. Is that how you say it? Wallonie? That's how I'm saying it. I don't care. Stage 1 was won by Caleb Ewan. It came down to a sprint finish. Also, Stage 2 came down to a sprint finish. Messy sprints, but Arnaud Demar took the victory on Stage 2. But yeah, the talking point essentially was that the road surfaces just aren't good enough for these riders to be racing on. Far too dangerous. So last week we were talking about Fabio Jakobsen and having his massive crash. We're talking about Remco Evenepoel and him having his crash, Max Schachmann, and then all these riders complaining about road conditions. I don't know what they can do. There's certainly points in races and roads that they can make a lot safer. There's some stuff is just ridiculously dangerous. And it's not until you actually have a crash there that someone goes, oh, yeah, that, like Milan-San Remo when Cav had that massive crash over the top of that bollard in the middle of the road. Every rider gets round it, there's no issue, no one thinks that's in the wrong place. And it's only in the wrong place till it actually happens. And then we go, what the is that doing there? It's difficult because this sport it's steeped in so much history. It's a hard man's, hard woman's sport. It's gritty, it's no frills, it's not like you see Formula One where it's all about the show. This is not about it. It's about the race and essentially racing on closed roads. It's not a specific circuit built for it. It's it's putting these riders in these circumstances that are really, really difficult in terms of their environment that they're racing in. But that is what makes cycling what it is. And if you essentially, you know, put wreck to cell barriers up, you put hay bales up, you covered everything in bubble wrap, you covered the riders in cotton wool, then it becomes so sterilized that it doesn't become the sport that we love anymore. But at the same time, something has to happen because the speeds are increasing, the technology is increasing, but we're still racing on the same roads that the riders were back in the 1940s, the 1950s. And I don't know what the answer is, because again, as a fan, if you watch this and everything was covered with safety barriers, you would lose the essence of the whole point of it, of traveling down these roads and seeing these sights. And the scenery is part of cycling, and you get rid of that, and again it becomes this sterilized, safer thing that's just not as entertaining. But something has to happen. So I don't know what the answer is. Like, is there an answer to it? Or do we just say, like Remco's accident, for instance, that bridge is there, everybody knows it's there, get yourself around it as safely as possible, and if that means you have to lose the race because of it, because you're not quite confident enough, then so be it. Or is there something that you need, like in that situation, it needs 10 or 15 foot of safety barrier, safety net that's going to catch a rider if they end up going over the side? It's a really difficult one. I don't know the answer to it. I don't know even if you know the answer to it, but I'd love your opinion on it. What needs to happen? What are we missing here? Or do we just have to accept, and the riders have to accept, that this is the sport they chose? Essentially, it's, you know, you think about the Isle of Man TT. No one's forcing the riders to go and race there, but they do it because they love it and they accept the risk involved. Yeah, they can make it a little bit safer here and there, but essentially the TT is the TT. If it wasn't, it would be just a normal race. It'd be a MotoGP race, but it's not. It's a TT. That's where people want to go and challenge themselves. And is it the same with the cyclists, that they want to race in these big events? They accept the risks involved, as hard and crap and terrible as it might be. They say these are the risks involved, and we're still going to race because we love it. Oh no? Leave your comments down below. And then finally, let's talk transfer news, as AG2R last week signed Greg Van Avermaet. They're bolstering their roster even further with the signing of Bob Jungels from De Koning Quickstep. Talking on the transfer, Jungels said, "With riders like Oliver Naesen and Greg Van Avermaet, the team will be very ambitious in the classics, and it's very motivating to be part of this group. And of course, we will still be looking at the stage races, since I know that this team has a very strong history in this area. I definitely want to achieve great things, initially in the 1 week races, but then also the Grand Tours, even if I am already well versed in what it takes to perform over 3 weeks." Maybe AG2R are just sick to death of French riders not performing the way they want. So hopefully, with Greg Van Avermaet there, Bob Jungels there, they are going to see some success. And I think they deserve it. They're always there or thereabouts, but never quite just where they want to be. But hopefully, again, with these two riders, it's going to be a very formidable force, both in those classics, both in those 1 week stage races and the Grand Tours as well. If you've got any comments about it, leave them down below. I'm not bothered either way. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hopefully we are now up to speed with everything that's going on in the cycling world. Plenty to talk about in all that. We could have gone on and on and on, but I think we covered the essentials. Leave your comments down below on everything we spoke about, and I will see you again in the next one. Subscribe, hit that like button, hit that dislike button if you've not enjoyed it. Do all those things that I always ask you to do. Make sure you head over to winyourdreambike.co.uk to be in with a chance of winning a brand new Trek Madone. Other than that, all that's left to say is bye.